So, long before we had the MCU, which means that Marvel is right now, Marvel is just on top of their game, there were the DC movies that came out during the 70s and the 80s. And in many people's opinions, one of the best out of that era of movies was Batman from 1989. Released on June 23rd of 1989 and directed by Tim Burton, the original Batman follows Bruce Wayne, who is a billionaire playboy by day and a bat vigilante by night known as Batman. Batman is tracking down this mobster named Jack Napier. Well, unfortunately, when their confrontation goes south, Batman inadvertently creates the clown prince of crime known as the Joker. The Joker begins to wreak havoc on Gotham City, and Batman is the only one left who is able to take down the Joker before it's too late. Now, fortunately, with this movie and maybe Richard Donner's Superman 2, those two movies, including this one, are probably my favorite out of the 70s and 80s DC movie era. And, well, with this movie, it's simply for one reason, and that it embraces the fact that it's a comic book movie. What I mean is that this movie's trying to have fun, and it has silly images, it's got insane images that are yet very badass, and it's got laugh-out-loud moments that will make you want to shit yourself. Even though this movie is trying to have fun, that doesn't mean that it's shy from flaws. Because this movie has a couple, it just has a tiny flaw, and that is that sometimes it goes a bit too over the top. And it has some moments that just shy away from the serious tone that the rest of the movie has. But aside from that, this movie is a very, very fun one. I've loved this movie since I was a kid, and yes, even though this movie does have a couple corny moments when you rewatch it, that doesn't mean this movie is bad. I'm going to give the original Batman from 1989 a healthy 9 out of 10. So, notice how what I said with the last movies is that, well, my main problem with it is that sometimes I went a bit too over the top. Now, with Batman Returns, this movie is sometimes really, really over the top to the point where it's borderline stupid. But we'll get into that in a moment. Let's get into the specifics. Released on June 16th of 1992 and directed by Tim Burton, Batman Returns follows Max Schreck, who is a businessman who ends up teaming up with the mysterious Penguin to take down Batman together. While at the same time, there's this vigilante named Catwoman running around who ends up teaming up with Penguin and Max Schreck towards the middle of the film. But as the movie goes on, she has a low-key relationship with Batman, which incites conflict among the four of them, and things only escalate from there. Okay, so before we get into the negatives, let's get into the positives. And one of the main positives of this movie is that it actually has more than one villain. The villains are great in this movie. We have the mysterious Penguin, who is a sad misfit that is cast up by society, and then he gets his revenge. We have Max Schreck, who is an understandable businessman. And then we got Catwoman, who just goes crazy at times, but we understand why she goes crazy because of all the shit she's been through. Another big plus is that this movie also feels like a comic book movie, which is what is kind of what this movie's going for. This movie is very, very artistic and is very over the top in its sets, but here it's welcome. Whereas with the other over the top stuff, it's not as welcome as much as, well, the sets are. And that's one of the biggest negatives with this movie, is that it gets really over the top. What I mean is the fact that Catwoman is very inconsistent, and she switches sides often, and she's incredibly over the top, and Penguin's living underneath Gotham. Give me a break. And then later when Catwoman kills Max Schreck by kissing him with an electric wire, it completely fries his ass. And speaking about Catwoman, how she's created is absolutely retarded. After she's pushed out a window, she's bitten and gnawed at by a whole bunch of these cats, and she starts to have a seizure. It's freaking weird. With Batman Returns, I have mixed opinions on it. But if I were going to give this movie a final verdict, I would say this. I'd say if you guys aren't in the mood for a depressing movie, or if you're not in the mood for a movie that isn't necessarily like the brightest bulb in like the workshop or whatever, like it's not the brightest bulb, then this movie isn't for you. If you want to see a movie that is serious, though, and has a couple over-the-top moments, this movie would be for you. But as for me, this movie goes a bit too over-the-top at times, which can really suck me out of the experience of this movie. But with some fun action and with some good characters, I'm going to give Batman Returns a 6.5 out of 10. So, there we go. We just went ahead and we looked over the original Batman and Batman Returns. But unfortunately, after this movie, we start getting into the really bad movies, even touching upon what might be the worst comic book movie of all time. It's pretty scary, let me tell you that. Well, there we go. I absolutely love the original Batman, even though it does get a little too over the top. And with Batman Returns, it does get really, really too over the top at times. Even though I can watch an over-the-top movie, Batman Returns does take it a bit too far. But aside from that, you guys should check these movies out if you are even a remote Batman fan. And I hope you guys have a good day, evening, night, whatever the heck time you're watching this. And I'll see you next time.